Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Sorry about the technology glitch. There is a chat function at the bottom, so you are welcome to click on that. Please do keep yourself muted until the end when it's time for questions, but if you have something you would like to ask or bring to our attention, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box. I will keep my eyes on faces that I can see, so if you have something that you urgently want to ask, we will make sure we get to you. So I am incredibly honored to have three very special guests with us tonight, Senator Maria Collett, Senator Katie Muth, and Senator Lindsey Williams, who all were elected in 2018, which was a very good year for Democrats in Pennsylvania. And I'm hoping that 2020 is going to be another really good year and that I will have the opportunity to serve with them in January. So I want to thank them for taking time to have this town hall with us tonight. And we have kind of a rough agenda, but we'll start things off just with some introductions. So let's just go in alphabetical order to keep it simple. If Senator Collett would like to go first.
Sure. So hi, everybody. Shanna, thanks for having me this evening. I'm really excited to join you and all of these good people here this evening. I am Maria Collett, and I represent the 12th Senatorial District in Pennsylvania. That is parts of Montgomery and Bucks counties right outside of Philadelphia. And as Shanna said, I was elected in 2018, and so 2019 was my first full year in the legislature, and I learned a lot of lessons. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that I need more good partners there with me to make sure that we are moving a really strong, good Democratic agenda in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So a little bit about my background, just so that you all know. I started my career as an attorney, represented the interests of children that were victimized by abuse and neglect before going back to school and becoming a nurse. And I worked as a nurse at the bedside in trauma care, in pediatric home health, and most recently in long-term care. And I have to say, who would have known that that experience as a long-term care nurse would have come in so handy, but it certainly has as we are navigating the COVID and coronavirus epidemic. It's something that I didn't know that I would draw on as much as I have here, trying to figure out what the right things to do for the people of Pennsylvania really are, and how we in the legislature can be supportive of those efforts. So I am excited to be here with you, Shanna, and with my colleagues, Senator Lindsey Williams and Senator Katie Muth. I will say just very plainly, we need more strong, good Democratic voices in our state Senate. We are so close to taking a majority on the Democratic side of the aisle, and I have served now with your opponent. I've served with him now for just over a year. I can tell you that sometimes I scratch my head. I scratch my head wondering who he is working for, because I don't think he's working for the people of his district, and I certainly don't believe he's working for the people of the Commonwealth. So I am really excited to be here supporting you this evening, meeting people who are ready to support you, answering their questions about why it's so critical and so important that we have someone like you, Shanna, someone with your background and your experience, someone who is a mom and an educator, someone who knows the daily firsthand struggles of everybody in your district, and can bring those to the legislature and fight on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth and of your district. And it's so critical that we have you there. I can't wait to welcome you. I know 2020 is going to be a good year for Democrats, and I know it's going to be a good year for Shanna Danielson and for all of us who can't wait to welcome you. So thanks for having me this evening.
Thank you. Elliot has made an appearance, everyone. This is Elliot. He's 5 and he's getting ready for bed, so he wanted to just say hi, maybe, or do that. But this is a big part of why I'm running, because I think he would agree with me, even though it's crazy how busy mommy is, right? He deserves way better than what we're giving him right now. So thank you, buddy. All right, I'm gonna move next to Senator Katie Muth, and we're gonna mute ourselves.
I'm going to unmute myself. Can everyone hear me okay? Just do a thumbs up. Yay, perfect. Thank you for having me. I am Senator Katie Muth. I was also one of the amazing women that I call myself amazing, elected in 2018 with my two other fabulous colleagues who were also winners of seats that were flipped from red to blue, which is a big deal. And I am honored to be on this call. And as my colleague, Senator Maria Collett said, we are really looking forward to having Shanna in the legislature. Her opponent certainly, I'll leave that sentence with nothing after to avoid using swear words. So I will move on to say that I am also non-traditional candidate and won in a non-traditional way. I think some people think that Shanna has an uphill climb, and of course she does. But when you're the little engine that could, it doesn't really matter. So as someone who wasn't supposed to win in 2018, you know, I do have faith that if you work hard, you can flip these seats and actually show people of all political party affiliations that there can be a quote unquote politician that actually fights for the people. So knowing Shanna's background and having the opportunity to get to know her, she's definitely reflective of the values that we need more of under the dome of corruption, so that we can give it a new nickname soon. I come from a sports medicine background. I also taught anatomy. I am struggling in the midst of this COVID pandemic to learn how to operate with all of these different problems coming around. So I think as a new legislator, it's hard enough as it is. And then we threw the curveball of the pandemic, and you know, it's a very interesting time where I really thought maybe transactional morality would dissipate a little bit and there'd be effort to work together. And unfortunately, I haven't seen that happen yet. So as we continue to head into the most bizarre and crazy and scary election season, you know, I think it's really important to have these conversations, because people are paying attention and starting to focus a little bit more on state level government, because A, they're stuck at home, or B, they're relying on a lot of resources to help them through economic relief. So I'll pass it over to, am I allowed to introduce her? The wonderful Senator Lindsey Williams.
Oh, thank you, Katie. That was wonderful. Or Senator Muth. Thank you all. Thank you for joining this call. I'm really excited to be here tonight with Senator Collett and Senator Muth to support Shanna. You know, I knocked some doors for her, and I was looking forward to coming back and knocking some more, but it looks like it might be a little delayed, but don't worry, we'll get back out there. As everyone said, I came in 2018. My background was in workers' rights and education. And so I worked for a number of workers' rights organizations, labor unions, and my job right before running was with the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers. So for me, the intersection between supporting workers and making sure that all of our kids have access to a quality education is, you know, why I ran and why I'm there and what I'm always fighting for. And to have Shanna as a teacher in the legislature is desperately needed when we're talking about how we are going to climb out of the fact that our kids haven't been in school 4 months, that they are dealing with distance learning, and that is way more of a struggle for our kids that were already struggling, whether it be from a socioeconomic status or whether they have an IEP that doesn't allow them to take advantage of the education in the same way, or like Shanna, you know, you're trying to teach music remotely, and it's challenging, and it's a brave new world, and our teachers have had to, you know, overnight teach in an entirely different way, and they've really rose to the challenge. But we're going to have some hard decisions and some hard conversations, and we need Shanna's expertise as we grapple with how we deal with these education challenges moving forward. And, you know, we need somebody who cares about workers and people and what this is doing to them, not only COVID, but all sorts of things. I know, unlike her opponent, Shanna will not host a hearing and ignore the voices of healthcare workers and first responders and other frontline workers. She will have them front and center. And that's why I want her in the state Senate with me. So thank you, Shanna.
you so much. Wow. Thanks. Okay, so to bring things down a notch, we're living through insanity right now, both with the pandemic itself and also the lack of response federally, and just some maniacal things coming out of Harrisburg the last 2 weeks, from the rally to the subpoena. I mean, the list goes on. So let's talk a little bit about what the state government response to this crisis has been. We can try and detach as much as possible from what's happening in DC. I know it's easy to get caught up in those press conferences every day, but I think the decisions being made in Harrisburg are a lot more vital to our ability to recover from this. So before we talk about the CARES plan that was launched today, if you could each maybe just give like a real quick, like, one good thing that's come out of the Senate or, you know, state government in the last few weeks, and maybe one thing that makes you crazy. You can go in whatever order you want.
Starting.
You are, because you unmuted.
I will say that one of the good things that has come out of this crisis is working with my colleagues to try to figure out answers for the people of Pennsylvania. And the truth is that I know that there are differing opinions on how we're handling this crisis, whether or not the governor's response has been adequate, whether or not the governor's response has been an overreach. There are definitely different viewpoints on that. But what I can say is that in the Democratic Caucus, in our state Senate, we have approached the responses given by our governor. We have approached all of those with an eye toward how does this help the people of the Commonwealth? And it hasn't been, how does it help my district? It hasn't been, how does it help your district and hurt my district? It's how does it help the people of the Commonwealth? And we've looked at it from the perspective of our most vulnerable, those frontline workers that have to continue to go to work. We have finally shown a light on the realities of that kind of work, working really hard for little pay and little benefits, what it means to not have a safety net for people in our communities who are going to inevitably suffer because of this. And I have to say that, you know, I'm not happy that we're exposing those things in the sense of we're exposing them because people are dealing with them. But I am happy that we are finally coming to these conversations from a place of there is good work that can be done by good government. And if we have people in our government who really want to do good things for the people in their communities, then we can get that done. It doesn't have to be about gamesmanship and partisanship. It doesn't have to be behind closed doors and deal making. There are transparent, accountable ways to do good things for the people in our communities. And Rand said it earlier, not many of you were on the call yet, but Rand said it when he said, we're all in this together. We have to work together to find the solution here. And he's absolutely right about that. And so I will say that's the good thing that has come out of this. I feel like even though we're working remotely and we're not seeing one another face to face, our focus on the people in our communities and in our Commonwealth has been even stronger. We have worked together to figure out what the solutions are for those people that Senator Lindsey Williams fought for, when she was working for PFT. We have worked very hard to find solutions for those people. Have we enacted them? I wish that I had a better track record for that. But what I can say is we're working on those solutions. And what I can say is that it has become even more clear to me that until we have a Democratic majority in our legislature, we're not going to achieve the things that good government can achieve for the people of this Commonwealth. So it is even more incumbent on us that we support good candidates that reflect the values and ideals that we share, that we want for the people in our communities and in our families, for the parents of the kids in our schools, all of that. We need to make sure we have those people alongside us so that we can stand as a collective and fight for the good things of the people in this state, because there is much good to be done if we have the right people standing up and fighting to do that good.
I think, yeah, to Senator Collett's, I agree wholeheartedly. Like it's been a little frustrating about what we can accomplish in a minority. We've been able to do some things, within our individual offices. I'm getting we're all getting so many calls from constituents seeking help with their unemployment. And while some people are frustrated at how slow it's been, like those unemployment workers are doing their best, and they're really working hard to get people a check. And it's felt good to help my constituents get that need, that unemployment that they need and deserve, and help them work through that process. I think one of the bills that I was happy to see passed was a remote notary bill that allowed people who right now need that for medical power of attorney and some things. That was something that on a bipartisan way, we were finally able to get across the line. And that was a good win. Where I have been really disappointed is where we've been able to push and get more PPE and testing for our frontline workers, all of our essential workers. And that is something that, Senator Collett and Senator Muth and our whole caucus has been saying, we need more of this. And then we had a hearing where we had heard from frontline workers where, nurses in nursing homes are wearing garbage bags because they don't have PPE. And they're reusing masks for days at a time. And it's just unacceptable. And so that's something that has been incredibly frustrating, that we, especially our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, talk about how they support first responders, and then they're leaving them without PPE and access to testing, and it's frustrating.
So I guess you're both relying on me to be the more blunt one in the scenario, so I will surely fulfill that role. I'm not sure though, because I had to go on legislative leave today to deal with a massive death pandemic going through my veterans home. So more on that in a moment. Did we end child marriage today? Did that happen? You were both there. Did we pass that? Is it going to the governor's desk? Okay, Lindsay said, holy shit, we could have just passed to end child marriage in Pennsylvania. It's 2020, folks.
We did.
Woo-hoo.
We did.
So I think that speaks volumes.
I
think
forgot
it's the best example. I thought maybe it didn't happen because you guys didn't say it. I'm like, oh shit, did we really?
I don't know. I was
no, we did.
We did other stuff. I forgot all about it.
We ended child marriage.
It could have been done years ago.
In 2020, we finally did it.
Way to go, Pennsylvania. Way to go. So I think that's a great segue into at least what I'll speak for myself, but I would assume that my two colleagues would agree, the level of frustration in terms of the slow pace of legislation. And the theme of transactional morality is all I can keep repeating is, what do I do? What do I get if I do the right thing? And I'll be blunt, the person that Shanna's running against certainly makes that calculation on a regular daily basis. And we need more people that work with urgency to get the right thing done, because it should be done and it needs to be done, not because you get your name on it, your picture taken, and a lot of other BS. So, that's a positive. Yay. But we have not, we have a lot of work to do. We did get the National Guard coverage for COVID, because that's helpful since they've now had to infiltrate our nursing homes from short staffing. So,
and that was Senator Muth's amendment who got that. So yay for Senator Muth, her very first amendment.
And for those that are on this call, that's a big deal, because that'll probably be the only thing that ever passes in the near future with my name on it ever. And that was Senator Regan agreed to that amendment. So this is what you call strategy in the election cycle. And I can say that because I think the governor signed that bill, so no way will it get fucked over and not run. So that's neither here nor there now. But I think you're hearing, both Senator Collett and Williams mentioned, we're making these things priorities, but the votes aren't there. The legislative will is not there to bring up bills. I mean, paid leave has been a bill for session after session, long before our arrival to the Senate. We don't have paid leave. We don't have protections for small businesses. Business interruption insurance is a big deal that could really be helping a lot of small businesses. That's, especially those who unfortunately got, screwed out of the paycheck protection. But 32 millionaires didn't, just so you know. And so as we talk about this, and as the state is supposed to fill in the gaps relative to the COVID relief, there's a lot of gaps to fill. And so where we spend relief money has been up for debate. I'm disappointed that we spend taxpayer money to go to session, quote unquote, even virtually. I guess in theory, somebody could claim per diem. I can't wait to see who does, to meet to literally end child marriage today in the middle of a pandemic. Not that that's not important, but again, should have been done decades ago. But we didn't do anything that is really going to bring dramatic relief to the majority of our Commonwealth. And so as everyone sits at home and is told to sit at home and anxious and worried and waiting for, unemployment, or waiting for, trying to, educate kids at home while they're working from home, whatever the circumstances, we're going to shift from panic to frustrated. And I think we're halfway there, and we don't have the political will to implement any real plan. It's a lot of people who are trying to fight for the right thing. Worker protections, as we talk about reopening. We can't reopen safely if we don't know who has the virus. We can't reopen safely if we don't have Lysol wipes that aren't going to be back in stock till the summer. We can't open safely until workers have PPE, and we can't even guarantee that to home care workers, nursing home workers right now. But let's just let all construction begin, because why not? They should be having masks too. So that's the mentality right now. And as frustrated as we are economically, the frustrations of families that have lost people to this virus are far greater, and they're permanent. And so as we move forward, of course, we're all going to keep fighting for these things that we desperately need. But again, I hope that the silver lining of this shitstorm is that people start paying attention to what could have already been in place to help, minimize the economic stress that everyone is under right now. That should have already been law, whether it's the feds or the state, doesn't matter. And so saying that, I hope that people become more politically engaged as a part of their frustration, even though that doesn't ignite some trolls on Facebook. But, is that having people starting to pay attention to who represents them in the state, and, let's try to get those PCN ratings up as everybody watches us on Zoom session, whatever, but get people to understand, the people that make decisions about how this relief is going to impact you is at the state level right now. So if you want to give billions and millions to hospitals and for-profit entities that haven't yet really hurt from this, follow the money. And so as we sit here and talk about disappointments, again, these are things that could have been in place long ago. And I hope that people that didn't care or didn't pay attention to, or actually thought who represented them was a decent human being, that the voting record counts, and that we bring attention to the fact that the majority party runs the calendar. They can call us to session whenever we want. We have a 12-hour, here you go, this is when you got to show up. And what is it? We're not coming back until, what is it, May 18th? Is that right? Did I hear that correctly, or am I wrong?
That's right, May 18th.
So from now until May 18th, as everyone sits at home and worries about what is going to happen and how are they going to handle this, the entire General Assembly still gets paid. Cool. So I hope that people start to realize that the power dynamic is incredibly against the working human, against the working Pennsylvanian, against every Pennsylvania that isn't, at the top 1%. And we have a lot of work to do, all the more reason to elect more people with a moral compass, a soul, and like Shanna.
Okay, so we've had a couple of questions already, and I'm going to do the longer one first, because I think all three of you will have some insight here. I'm sure there are people in your district who probably voted for your opponent. I mean, I'd like to think we all are going to win unanimously, but that is not always the case. So what are some ways that people can reach legislators to voice opposition? For example, I tried for approximately 8 weeks last summer to schedule a meeting with Mike Regan to discuss raising the minimum wage, and approximately 8 times was told by his scheduler that they were going to put me on the schedule that week and she would reach out, and that never happened. My state representative, on the other hand, if those are smaller districts, maybe it's easier. I did get a meeting with her. It was awful, but I had one. So what do you recommend for folks who want to voice their frustration and be heard, and feel like someone's actually listening to them? What do they do?
Well, I think, what you did is the right thing, right? It's the thing we tell everybody to do. Call and make an appointment, go talk to your legislator, and show up at their office, write a letter, do all of those things. And I think that, I'm going to speak for Senator Williams and Senator Muth, even though they didn't ask me to, and say that, we are all incredibly responsive to our constituents, no matter what side of the aisle they come on, no matter whether they were someone who, probably voted against me or not. That doesn't matter. Once I'm in office, I serve everybody in my district. And so we're incredibly responsive, but you're right. A lot of other legislators aren't. One of the things I can tell you is that in this day of social media, you've got a big megaphone now, and take to their social media, post comments when you see them talking about something on their social media, patting themselves on the back for doing something great. Say, great. What about minimum wage for working people? You still haven't responded to that. And look, I'm not saying you're going to get a response from them in that way either, but you can continue to raise awareness about that issue. It's really hard if they're not going to meet with you, what you can do to make sure that you're heard. If you can go to the Capitol on a day that it's a session day, there are always lobby days. Join a group that will lobby and stand on the steps of the Capitol and make your voice heard. Go to their office, knock on the door, and say, hey, I'm a constituent of Mike Regan's, and I'd like to talk to him about such and such thing. That's, I think, the thing I think that was like one of the things that just sort of I was mind blown when I first got into the legislature, that it was like, do people remember who they work for? And they don't. They get there and they completely have either forgotten that they work for the people, or they disregard that they work for the people. So it's up to us, the people, to remind them. I talk to my legislators too. I talk to my state rep, and I talk to my congresswoman, and I talk to my governor, whether he likes to hear it or not, and right. I mean, but, make your voice heard and remind them who they work for. And you know what? Vote, because that's the way to show them that they're not responding to you, that they're not listening to you. Vote and tell them, I'm going to vote in the next election and you're not responding to me. And that means you don't represent my interests. You don't represent me.
Yep. And, before you vote, knock on some doors, make some phone calls, donate, some money to a candidate that shares your values, that is going to fight for you. Even a small contribution really makes a big difference. Like Senator Collett, it doesn't matter whether you have a D or R or an independent after your name. If you call my office and you need help or you want to share a concern, the door is open. It is wide open. And I have met and talked with people that I disagree with. I always learn something. We may not still in the end agree, but I have learned, and sometimes I've been able to adjust. And, that's what this is about. It's a huge learning process. I told people when I, got into office, they'd be like, how is it? And I say, it's like drinking from multiple fire hoses from different directions, because you're just learning so much stuff that you don't have deep knowledge on. And so learning from experts and people in your community, I take advantage of that. Every opportunity I get, whether I agree with you or disagree with you, I always learn something. And, another thing you can do is, if they're in the press touting how wonderful something is and it's really not wonderful, or it's leaving things behind, you have the option to write a letter to the editor or an op-ed and respond publicly in writing that, no, this is why this thing has been left out of that conversation, and we need to talk about that. That is an important way to use your voice as well, is in the press.
Since the other topics were covered, I'm going to go for the jugular. And I think that is called the heat. You bring the heat. You bring the heat because these people have never had the heat on them. So you have to retweet things at Mike Regan, and you can come in and give me my eye drops. Thank you. My husband had to bring my eye drops. We're drying out. If you have to, call them out. It's a thin skin situation. They shake pretty quick. And the problem is not enough people do that consistently. So we get like a little nudge, and I just know it works because I've tipped over many a boat. So by doing that, before I was elected, and certainly now, and sharing things like, sharing the experience you had with the legislator that's frustrating. And don't just like stuff on Facebook, share it. That's the only way it goes out into the world. And I think I sometimes am like, and like, as we were starting at this, I shared the Zoom link, like on 2 things. Like, you have to keep putting information out, forcing it to be in people's feeds. Some people don't even know who the heck represents them. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know who John Rafferty was when he was my senator. Why would I? He never mailed me anything. And so that's okay, but letting them know this is who represents you and this is the decisions they make are really, really important. So spreading the word, watch their voting record. You can sign up on the PA Legis website to follow a legislator. You can get updates on every vote they make. You can follow a specific bill. Of course, contact us if you care about something, but contacting the majority party is the way to go because they control everything. So if you can put the heat on them in a collaborative, consistent, not going to give up manner, you will see a shift happen. It's just, there needs to be a bigger army.
All right, so I'll do a quick one because I feel like this is either a yes or a no. Is it possible to override a veto by Governor Wolf right now?
Yes, I mean, we could, it is possible, but I don't think it's probable. I mean, the fact that we flipped 6 seats prior to 2018, there was a veto-proof majority, and we picked up 6 seats. So they have to flip quite a few of us Democrats to override a veto. So I don't think it's likely, but technically it's possible.
Okay, and then we'll backtrack because I just realized I missed one. Sorry, Nancy. Can someone give a brief overview of what's being done for folks who are incarcerated and those who work in prisons right now in regards to the crisis with COVID-19?
So I can speak for parts of the state. I don't want to say it's the same, and obviously I think Maria and Lindsey might have some additional information. Maria and I share part of a county, and obviously Lindsey may have more about her area. And relative to county prisons versus state institutions, I think it's another example of having to ask for a lot more information, and we eventually get it. I know our Montgomery County prison has now started to test everyone, and the numbers went up, but I mean, they are testing more, which is important. So in any place where there's a confined space, where there's a bunch of people, of course, there's going to be cases. It's about how those cases are managed. And so if it's in a place that there's a large population of individuals interacting in a small space, then of course it has a greater likelihood, but it's making sure that the quarantine and isolation part is the key. And that includes both with staff and inmates, and then also making sure that we're releasing people that don't really need to be in there in terms of, whether they're there on cash bail or, low nonviolent offenders and things of that nature, so that we can get people out. So there's less people inside. But I know I have limited it. We get a report from the Department of Corrections. They have not had a call with us as legislators. I don't believe they had a media call, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Maria and Lindsey. But so again, it's one of those things you sort of have to sort of push for more information. You're not going to get it willingly, similar to the nursing home situation, sadly, as there's no current requirement for anyone to report data publicly or death rates publicly, there's no minimum testing standard for nursing homes, for prisons, for all these places. There's no minimum standard for testing workers of any capacity in a prison or not, in the sense that there's not enough test kits. But as counties that are high, that have higher numbers, such as Montgomery County, Delaware County, Allegheny County, I think obviously that's a really important piece to have in place. But I know that there certainly is a lot of work to do, because not all of the prisoners have masks. I know there's efforts through nonprofits to make masks. There's still a PPE shortage. I do know that one of the SEIs are having, they claim to have medical coverage on site, so again, this is what you're told. It's hard to get a verification of that because you're not in there and we can't go visit, right? So I have done several SEI visits around the state, but right now it's not like I can go do that. So asking questions and being diligent about that, I think, is key.
I think SCI Phoenix, which is in Montgomery County, that was one of the newest facilities, and it actually had isolation rooms. So it actually had the ability to isolate an inmate who was positive for the illness. And I'm speaking in a medical manner, not solitary confinement or something. I'm talking about isolating in a medical capacity to treat that prisoner while he was going through, or while they were experiencing COVID symptoms and recovering. But beyond that, it's like Senator Muth said, it differs based on the area and where the facility is, how old it is, how populated it is. Our governor did make strides early on in this epidemic to make sure that we were working on releasing nonviolent offenders based on certain parameters, certainly not just an opening of the floodgates to let people out of jail or out of prison. But again, even that doesn't, it doesn't necessarily stem the tide of what's going on when we have people that are in these, crowded facilities. I think the article that I read this morning said that there were 938 inmates in Montgomery County that were tested, and 177 of them tested positive, which was like exponentially higher than what they had initially thought. They thought they had a very small number of positive inmates, and turns out they had this large percentage. And so then trying to figure out, well, what do we do with that number? We certainly can't isolate 177 people for the 14-day incubation period. And by the way, we're not sure where they are in, the illness, like carrying this virus. And, I think a large percentage of those 177 were asymptomatic. So there are so many things that we're trying to get our arms around just as a general population when it comes to COVID. And talking about people that are in these facilities, it just makes it even more devastating that we don't have adequate access to proper protective equipment and testing, because those are the two things we're going to need to really get our arms around this virus, its its impact, and to get to the second phase of it, which is to get beyond the people and get to the financial impact and figure out how are we going to reopen our Commonwealth so that we don't, fail economically, but how do we do it in a way that's safe so that we're not further jeopardizing people's lives? It's just not, it's not an acceptable deal to make. I think Senator Muth has said it many times before. You can rebuild an economy. You cannot bring someone back to life. And we need to be in the business of saving lives, not just livelihoods, but there has to be, we have to figure out good policy to do both of those things.
So I think there are a couple other questions in here touching on testing, touching on the impacts of this on higher education. I think we can discuss kind of all of that. If you would be so kind as to briefly tell us a bit about what the Senate Democratic Caucus proposed today with the Pennsylvania CARES plan. I will put the link to this in the chat so folks can feel free to check it out while we're hearing a little bit about it. I was teaching, so I missed the live stream video today, but this looks pretty thorough. So I put the link in the chat if everybody wants to take a peek at that. But if you guys wouldn't mind touching a little bit on what is this, how is it going to help, and why is it better than what the other side is presenting?
Well, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, and maybe Senator Muth or Senator Collett has them. But overall, what it is the money that was allocated from the federal government through the CARES Act to Pennsylvania. It is the Senate Democrats' plan of how we would want to spend that money. So how would we want to divide it? What things are we prioritizing? And within our plan of spending that money, we're prioritizing spending on testing and PPE for healthcare, first responders, and other frontline workers. We are prioritizing education. We are prioritizing from early childhood to K to 12 that are purchasing all these laptops and equipment that they need, to higher ed, because they're refunding room and board and things like that, and they were already in a kind of shaky financial position, and they are critical to our infrastructures and to our economy, that we have a strong state higher education system. It is prioritizing childcare, because the childcare costs for our first responders and our essential workers is important. The childcare workers are an essential part of our workforce and our economy. We're going to need additional education in the summer months and additional allocations for food. I'll let you guys chime in. I think I'm forgetting what else is there, but really we're trying to put into a dollar amount what our priorities are for moving Pennsylvania forward and spending these dollars in a way that will help people and help us get out of COVID-19.
Yeah, and I think so the money has to be spent on COVID-related expenditures, and it has to be spent before the end of this calendar year. So our caucus put together, we all, provided input if we wanted to put together this plan for how we're going to spend this money and what we're going to do with it. And Senator Williams talked a lot about the different areas that we wanted to make sure were taken care of. We looked at hospital settings, home care settings, nursing home facilities. What are we doing to sort of inject those facilities and those organizations with some, funding support, because they're really suffering through this crisis. Another one was small businesses. What are we doing?
That's the one I was forgetting. Thank you.
What are we doing to help our small businesses get back on track? And a part of that is in economically disadvantaged areas, small businesses that are owned by people that traditionally aren't qualifying for those big bank loans. And, I think Senator Muth talked about the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and what a debacle that turned out to be. And just how many businesses in our communities, I'm sure they heard from as many as I did, that said, I went to my bank, and by the time I got there, my bank said the money had already been given away. It was all gone. And we learned that, the banks were the ones that were getting rich off of the back end of that, and that they were funneling their own clients through that instead of really helping the small business owners that needed it get through that program. So this is our way, our response to say, hey, Governor Wolf, this is how we think the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania should spend these federal dollars that we're going to get as part of this CARES package, because we need the money. but we need to use the money in ways that are really going to help us rebuild our communities, whether that means through proper testing and personal protective equipment, whether it means making sure that our nursing homes don't falter and flounder in this time when we need their care more than ever, whether it means getting our small businesses back up and running so that when we are on the other side of this, that we don't just see empty, storefronts, that we really do get Main Street back up and running the way it needs to be. But these are all things that Democrats have traditionally fought for. And that's all this is. This is us putting it down on a piece of paper with a dollar sign next to it saying, this is what it's going to cost our Commonwealth to do some of these things. We can't do all of the things we need to do, but this is where we're going to put that money to make sure that we're doing things the right way for this state. And it's our proposal. We were really, we unveiled it today. We hope that the governor will heed our advice and that he'll work with us. His administration will work with us as we move forward on trying to get these pieces of the puzzle in place. But it has to be a collective lift. It is not going to, it's not going to work for us to end up in partisan bickering back and forth across the aisle. This has to be a collective lift to make sure that this money is spent appropriately and that it funds the programs that it needs to fund, to make sure that people get back on their feet. This is beyond devastating. I don't need to tell any of you on this call. This has been beyond devastating, and it will continue to be if we don't figure out the right way to spend the money that the federal government is injecting into our revenue stream in order to help with COVID.
Do you want me to go or do you want to move on? You're muted.
Sorry, I click it, it doesn't listen to me. The other question that's come up a couple of times is about testing, and if there's information, I know it's hard to get from the federal level, but if the state has maybe better information on if we're going to be able to ramp up testing. I saw something today that said the earliest Pennsylvania would be able to move out of this would be the end of May, and that's only if testing is happening. So is there an update? I know you probably get that 100 times a day.
I have no update other than the answer we're met with as we continue to ask for rationale, information, justification. Even our efforts to reopen are not based on any minimum number of tests. We have not tested people in these rural counties that are about to reopen, have less than 100 people tested. I am appalled by the lack of capacity for a whole entity of government trying to make decisions about public health, who seem to think that there's some magic ability to overcome, as if this virus changed anyway since we've been at the stay-at-home order, as if we can just open up and we're all magically unicorns and immune, that we don't even know we're immune. And I'm frustrated and I'm disappointed, and I'm really just outraged, to be honest, that there is a Secretary of Health that could not explain the calculation that her own department put forth as one of the criteria of reopening, and told us to go look at a website. So I am not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I've done medical research for a thesis. I know data, but when you don't have a minimum number of people to be tested, I don't know how you could say we're flattening a curve. I don't know how you can say that that this is under control. So I'm fearful, and I'm just being honest here, is that we will reopen in whatever way that looks like. Whatever industry is lobbying hard enough. As you now know, if you need to go golfing or fly fishing on a marina boat, that is accessible to you. So if those were things that you were really concerned about, your government's working for you. So I just would like to make that public service announcement. I believe you can also now go camping, preferably in Joe Scarnati's district, because allegedly the cases are very low. And so that's a great place to vacation with you and your family, because we all have so much disposable income that we can fly, fish, and golf and go camping. So those are things that were announced as efforts to help with all of our mental health. I don't know about you, but that's called like the white elitist disposable income mental health plan. That's not helping anybody else. So again, these are the decisions made by the people in charge. I am not the governor. I don't agree. I'm sure many would cry if I was governor, but I mean, things would be much different. So we don't have this data to truly have a safe reopen. And when we now allow open houses for real estate sales, and I'm not against these certain things, I just am mind blown that we are not able to say, these are the metrics in which you can operate safely. And one of those metrics, there is no discussion in the majority and in the governor's office that says, holy heck, if you reopen, let's protect your workers. Report how much PPE you're going to need. Report how much you have. Is it even possible? Because if not, then you can't reopen.
Yeah, and I would add enforcement of whatever requirements we are putting into place, because we cannot keep track of it. So we are not we're just saying, here are some guidelines. We're not enforcing it. And we are also not protecting workers who raise health and safety issues and then get fired, demoted. As a result, we don't have protections in Pennsylvania to protect them if they lose their job for speaking up that their employer is violating those health and safety guidelines that were put into place.
So my final line to this is, because we don't have adequate testing and we will reopen irresponsibly, we'll probably be on the Zoom chat in a few months together discussing how the hell we combat part 2 of this debacle. And everyone will be really pissed off, and the unemployment site will definitely have crashed by then. Maybe the government will be overthrown by then. I don't know, but like, to do this now and fail at a successful like effort to reopen, the economic toll will be immense and the death toll will be even more immense. So again, I am begging the administration daily, multiple times a day, 3 times a day actually, to increase these protections, even in nursing homes. We don't have capacity to test frontline workers. Again, I guess because the majority of people that are making these decisions still have the option to work from home. Maybe they don't care, but I certainly care. So, and I know others do, but it's super frustrating. And take it away, Maria.
A lot of the people that are making those decisions have never been they've never been in a nursing home. I mean, like, nope. I mean, like, I've worked in a nursing home. I worked during flu season, and let me tell you, that was hard enough. Being the infection control nurse during flu season in a nursing home, that was hard enough. This is no flu. This is no flu. And we are not protecting the people that live in those nursing homes. Those are their homes. Like, make no mistake, they're not in a facility. They're not somewhere else. That is their home. That is their home. And we don't do what we need to do to protect them in their homes and to protect the good people that are trying desperately to work hard to support those people in their homes. And it's, the word disappointing doesn't even begin to cover it. It is devastating.
It's negligence.
Yes. As a lawyer and a nurse, I can tell you.
I saw a post today from my state representative who was complaining that people are snitching on local businesses who are operating and they know that they shouldn't be. And just the comments, like comparing this to Nazi Germany. And it's like, there seems to be such a cultural divide. I mean, look at the rally at the Capitol. And I know that that was not really a grassroots rally. Like, that was sponsored by people with a lot of privilege and a lot of money who are using our citizens as pawns. But how do we'll close on this. How do you reconcile those sides of the argument, I guess, as a senator and as a person? Because I'm sure you're seeing both sides of this in your districts as well. We know the obvious answer, right? You can't bring people back from the dead. You need to protect people before we can protect the economy. But like, if you could, I don't know, maybe just a closing statement on, you know, what you think the path forward is, how we get out of this mess. Brief.
Testing, number one. And number 2, everybody vote by mail, vote from the safety and comfort of your home, vote for Democrats, and we can change the agenda.
I don't think I could, top that. I'll do testing, PPE, and vote from home.
I add to testing, PPE, vote from home, contact tracing, isolation places in every county. So when this little surge for part 2 sneaks up, we can isolate people immediately and not spread it everywhere. So that's something I just would like to say as a public service announcement, as my final call, is ask for all these things because they are currently not, they're not planned for in any reopening plan by this administration.
So we'll call that an ending call to action for everybody who took the time to get on. Some of you are valiantly doing what I'm doing. I see Rich Sterner's here, who's running against Senator Mastriano, who orchestrated that whole nightmare last week. So not everybody can run for office all the time, right? But you can do a lot of things that the senators have already talked about tonight, whether that's writing letters to the editor, make those phone calls, send those emails. Social media works. Sometimes they actually pay attention to that. Especially, I feel like
contribution to Shanna.
Yes, that would be very helpful too. Thank you. But I mean, there are things that we can do. I know it's easy to feel defeated. I know there are days that are really hard to see a way out of this. But it's just nice to hear that we have people like Senator Collett and Senator Muth and Senator Williams who are there actually fighting for people, for working people, and for families, and not just for everybody's bottom line. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to hop on tonight. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email them to me. It's just shannaforpa@gmail.com. I will put that in the chat, and then I can always reach out to the senators and get some answers for you. So thanks everybody again. Stay home, stay safe, stay calm, and get active. Thank you so much.
Thank you.